to lesson 1-1.2, the rise of the Carolingians. Today we're going to take a look into the history of the Carolingian Empire and to see how they evolved and how they came to power, and eventually we're going to introduce Charlemagne, an individual who we'll be spending a couple of weeks with. So, Frankish migration. As we discussed in the last lesson, the Franks were a Germanic tribal people who had migrated into Western Europe during the collapse of the Roman Empire. So they're one of many of these groups that worked their way into the former Roman lands. Now, these tribes, the Franks included, soon formed several kingdoms within this former empire. The Franks themselves had several different little Frankish kingdoms within their larger Frankish area, the Franks being more of an ethnic group. We had lots of different kingdoms, but common language, common history, common culture. Now in 509 AD, an individual by the name of Clovis, who is the leader of one of these numerous Frankish kingdoms, is going to make a push to really control all the Frankish lands. So beginning up here in what is today northern France, we have the kingdom of Clovis, and then he begins to expand out. And you can see how he eventually captures Paris, and then moves even further south toward what is today Spain. He will eventually defeat all of his Frankish rivals, and he will be the only Frankish king. Now this begins a period in European history where the Merovingians are in control. The Merovingians are the descendants of Clovis, and they form the Merovingian dynasty. Merovingian is like a family name. And they're going to rule the Franks for quite a while. 250 years, the Merovingians will be the kings of the Franks. Very different, the French and the Franks. Kings of the Franks. I say kings because the Merovingian power is going to decrease quite a bit in those last 100 years. And although they'll still be kings, they won't be the kings that we think of. Now the Merovingians themselves are going to divide this Frankish realm into several different sub-kingdoms. You can look at this map here and see several of them outlined. We have Austrasia over here, Neustria, Burgundy, and these are modern regions within France. You can see some of the others as well that they had less control over, were still kind of encompassed within Frankish lands. Now the power of the Merovingians themselves is going to decline. The kings are going to become less concerned with ruling. These regional areas are going to become increasingly powerful, and the king will have less sway over them over time. So the Frankish kingdom is really strengthened and centralized by Clovis, and then begins this slow process of losing that power amongst the Merovingian kings. Now, the Merovingian period is really in decline by the time we get to the Battle of Tours, but the Battle of Tours really just kind of signifies how much the Merovingians are no longer important to Frankish history. The Battle of Tours is going to be an essential battle in stopping the expansion of the Islamic Empire. In the early 700s, the Islamic Empire really exploded to control the Middle East and North Africa and parts of Europe and Spain as well. And the Umayyad Caliphate is in control of most of Spain. The Umayyad Caliphate is, Caliph is kind of like a religious king who's in charge of the empire, and the Umayyads were really, very powerful. And they had conquered most of Spain, and they were really seeking to conquer the world. And were pushing north into mainland Europe and wanted to conquer the Franks. As you can see in this map, we have this green area here, which is the kingdom of the Franks, kind of while the Merovingians are in decline. And the Umayyads know the Merovingians are in decline, and they think that this is going to be an easy thing for them to do, to take over the kingdom of the Franks. The yellow is modern-day Spain and was controlled by the Umayyads. And you can see that that yellow is starting to stick right up into the Frankish kingdom like a little knife. in the back of the Franks. And this is very much the Umayyads trying to take over Francia, or the kingdom of the Franks. Now, at the Battle of the Tours, the Islamic Empire, they're going to underestimate what the Franks are really capable of. Their expansion is going to be halted, and it's going to be halted mostly because of some very successful leadership of Charles Martel. Charles Martel is going to fight the Battle of Tours, going to lead the Franks in the Battle of Tours, and is going to win. And Charles will get the nickname Charles the Hammer as a result of this. And he was kind of the highest ranking member within this Merovingian dynasty. He's not himself a Merovingian. He's pretty much leading the kingdom, though. By this time, the kings themselves are just kind of enjoying the palace life and letting others lead. And Charles the Hammer was leading the Franks at this time. So Charles the Hammer, pretty much already acting as king, doesn't have the title, will never have the title, but is pretty much the king. Even before the Battle of Tours he was. After the Battle of Tours, he's really just looked at as the guy in charge. He's the only person that matters. And after the Battle of Tours, it starts to become clear that this Merovingian dynasty has kind of run its course. They're done. They're not important anymore. We don't really even need them. They're going to let them stick around for a little while, but not too much longer. Charles the Hammer is really the guy in charge. He's never going to be king, like I said, but he's the guy. Now, Charles, like I said, never officially crowned king, but after his death, he's going to do what Frankish kings have typically done and divide up some of his power and some of his control amongst his son. Doesn't consult this Merovingian king, doesn't feel he needs his approval. He just simply says, you know, when I die, my two sons, Pepin and Carloman, they're going to take over. Pepin's going to have some of the kingdom, Carloman's going to have some of the rest. Now, Carloman is not all that interested in rule. He's more of a religious guy. He decides after a little while that he'd rather just study Christianity. So Pepin winds up being the sole ruler, and Francia is kind of reunited under him. Now, Pepin says finally to this Merovingian charade that's been going on, we don't need these guys. We don't need the Merovingians. They're done. They're out. I'm King Pepin now. I'm the man. I'm in charge. And he'd already been the man. He'd already been in charge. This is not news to anybody else. The only thing that's different now is that Pepin is going to wear the crown. He's going to be the king. And he gets crowned by the Pope, and he is now officially the first king of a new dynasty, the Carolingian dynasty. Carolingian is named after Charles. It's a Latinized version of Pepin's father. And Pepin is going to be a very successful king. He's going to increase the Franks' relationship with Rome. It starts to be a really good relationship. Remember, the Franks are the guys that kind of took part in ruining this empire. But Pepin's going to do a lot to mend that. Befriends the Pope. Things get to be better, and he continues this expansion. But Pepin's not the real important guy. The real man, the guy that we focus on, the guy that we love when we talk about Frankish history, is going to be his son, King Charles. We're going to know him by another name, but at first he was simply King Charles. Confusing with Charles the Hammer, not Charles the Hammer. They like to recycle names in this family. To make it even more confusing, we see that upon the death of Pepin, Charles' father, well, Charles has a brother named Carloman. Remember, Carloman was also the name of Pepin's brother, so he named his son after his brother. There are two Carlomans. Neither of them are that important. Don't worry, Carloman is not on the test. We do need to know Charles. Charles the Hammer, and this guy. Charles and Carloman are going to split the kingdom. This here is King Charles, the guy that we're going to focus on, the second one, not the grandfather, this guy. Now, as had happened before, this Frankish kingdom, you split up the inheritance between all sons. Charles is in charge of part of it. Carloman's in charge of part of it. That doesn't work out in the long run for a nation. You can see quickly how over a few generations a nation gets broken up. But King Charles is lucky. His brother dies. I mean, we're not lucky when our brothers die. But he does get to take over the entire kingdom, so it kind of worked out for him. And there's a lot of evidence that he and his brother didn't get along very well anyway, so who knows. There's actually, side story, there is some historians who kind of think that maybe Charles had something to do with Carloman dying. I don't know. I don't necessarily subscribe to it, but it is out there. I'll put that to you. But in any case, Charles takes over the kingdom. He is going to dramatically increase the size of Francia, the Frankish lands, and almost more importantly, increase the influence, because he's going to be a whole lot more than just a military leader. Charles is going to do a whole lot to bring back learning, science, literature, the study of grammar, all this wonderful stuff that's going to make Francia this center of learning within Europe. And it really brings about this period of time known as the Carolingian Renaissance, this small little rebirth of ancient learning. It's not going to last very long, but Charles is the guy who does it. This winds up being his kingdom, right there, taking up much of what is today France, Germany, Switzerland, northern Italy, a bunch of the Balkan nations. It's a big kingdom. And he is remembered throughout history for all of his accomplishments. I'm going to go through a lot of them, as Charles the Great, or Latinized as Charlemagne. This guy is Charlemagne. We're going to spend a lot of time with him. I hope you enjoyed this introduction. More is coming soon. So long.